Welcome, everybody. So you are at the Business on the Block podcast. This week, AI takes center stage. We're going to be filling you in on the TLDR, on the forthcoming EU regulations. We're going to find out how AI is already impacting employees in the corporate space. And we're going to see what happens when CEOs don't admit that AI is being used in their product. All the latest happenings in artificial intelligence this week, Business on the Block, episode 58, AI regulation. As always, I'm joined today by my lovely co-host, Michelle Peterson-Clark.
Hi, everyone.
And Mike Neubauer.
Hello.
And so we're going to jump into story number one. This is coming up of the Associated Press. Europe reaches deal on comprehensive AI rules. So anyone not following the AI space, the EU has outlined a framework for regulating artificial intelligence. This will be the first in the globe anywhere. It limits the use of AI for facial recognition in surveillance. This actually was the thorniest topic and what they were most contentious, let's say. It will limit emotional recognition of individuals in the workplace and at schools. So again, facial recognition to identify your mood. It does limit the police use of biometric identification. There are fines of up to $35 million for violations of this. The law does not apply in full to the military, and formal adoption is expected next year, but rollout in the EU will not happen until they think 2026. So, with thoughts around what's going on, closest to the action, I would argue, is Michelle Peterson-Clark out there in London. Michelle, we'll start with you. What's going on in the AI space in Europe?
Well, it's a really good step forward, I think, in terms of leading other jurisdictions to get their act together. Now, we need to say that, and Mike's showing the article now, and we'll put that in the chats. We need to say that they haven't voted on it yet. That will happen in the new year. But the parameters around which they wanted to, put some measures and some controls and some stops in to, particularly in terms of facial recognition things around AI and how that's used in the business and corporate world. Those sorts of things have been included in this, and those people who the European Commissioner Thierry Breton was, quite excited that they'd actually been able to pull all of this together, which means that other countries like the US, Australia, Singapore, UAE, those sorts of countries are going to have to start thinking about this and looking at this. Secondly to that, though, and we know, don't we, that sometimes the EU having regulations for some of these things, like with Facebook and a few other different bits and pieces and some other software stuff that we know about, they cause problems because companies say, oh, well, that's it, we can't be in the EU anymore because this regulation is hindering our business, or we're not going to make as much money or whatever. So there's some trickiness around some of this stuff as well.
Right. Mike, what do you think about this? Is this a good start? What?
I mean, something's got to happen. This thing is going so fast, so evolving so quickly. It's very difficult to keep up with all the different use cases of what AI is going to bring. Now, when you use the term AI now, what do you think of? You think of elements like ChatGPT and, some of the counters to that, Midjourney and some of the image recognition software. I think to lump all of these into one, bill that's going to be a regulatory body is very foolish, because they all don't accomplish the same things. So I think more importantly, there needs to be a definition of what AI rules are in place for which specific use case, and just kind of branch out from there. Ironically, earlier today, I heard there's apparently a huge issue with an AI bot that was created that can take any photo and render a nude image of that individual.
Oh, yeah, that's a hot topic right now.
So this is a huge problem, right? This is non-consensual, and you can't really tell what's real and what's not. Majority of this content is women, and that, I guess, is just due to the demand for that. But the reality is that, like, when you start doing things like that, and then you can't differentiate what is real and not real with this type of content creation, the real world implications are going to be catastrophic. Not just, ruining people's careers, families, livelihoods, but potentially breaking people down mentally to a point where, they won't be able to deal with it. So yeah, I see there needs to be regulatory initiatives put in place to protect people's privacy, number one, to not be able to use their image and likeness for those intended purposes, but also to just put some safety rails in place where if that does happen, there has to be some traceability to the people who created that content and then therefore held liable for it.
So I've got two thoughts on that. Number one, I'm not as concerned about the non-consensual, the smutty aspect of it, because people generally all agree that's wrong. That's not really controversial. If there is controversy in that there's no rules yet, so we can't prosecute. But nobody really opposes that. No sane person. Where it gets contentious in my mind, though, is facial recognition in the streets is what they do in China right now. It's how they enforce things. The EU says they're not going to do that, but it was very contentious because it's a quote unquote safety feature for society, right? You can ensure that there's no things like terrorism. My point is that when people say they're not going to do stuff, this is tinfoil hat now, you get into like Facebook's not going to target children, Twitter's not going to ban stuff on COVID, and AI won't replace workers. All that stuff eventually turns out like, yeah, we're trying to do the right thing, but so I feel like the rules, like the details matter. Devil is always in the details of this stuff. Here in the States, we haven't gotten off our duff. They're not even in motion yet to regulate. And Michelle, you mentioned before the start of the broadcast, it seems like nothing will happen until the presidential election here for American rules. But I'm actually encouraged by what Europe is doing. I feel like we all know there's regulation needed. It's a good first step. I want to see what it is. Like, let's get the details out to the public.
I think it's important to also say that nothing is said to be introduced until at least 2025 at the earliest. But what they have done is they've put in some pretty stiff penalties for violations to discourage people. So whether or not that will ultimately, but 35 million euros, so 38 million, US dollars, in terms of that's a bit of a big stick for you to actually, if you work or your business operates in the EU, to actually look at what it is that you're doing, isn't it?
To your point about the timing there, Michelle, between now and 2026, when this article says it may get enacted, that's an eternity in the business world is a month, especially in an AI, evolution. So a lot will happen. There have been all kinds of crimes, if you will, or alleged crimes with AI already perpetrated on the short time it's been around, from copyright violation to personal, what Mike has referenced here about non-consensual pictures. So 2026, there's a lot that could go wrong between now and then.
Well, there's a lot more evolution that's going to happen between now and then too. So this is where regulation and this type of efforts are always second to the advancements of where these technologies are going at, especially the rate that they're going at. But yeah, I mean, look, we're not going to touch this thing here on this side of the pond before the election, because if I had to guess, we're going to see a lot of AI generated content that's going to be used in promotion for the election. So why regulate it now before they have the opportunity to exploit it, I suppose, right? So, it's still very much a mess. And I think that the number one thing that, blockchain and Web3 and NFTs have sort of taught us is, be careful about your image and perception on things on the onset.
How do you protect yourself though, right?
Well, protecting yourself and absorbing content that you choose to believe or not to believe are different things, right? So, obviously you want to protect yourself in the sense that you don't want facial recognition software all over the place, because that is a complete violation of everything. And that is a very slippery slope that does not end up in a good spot. But the ability to believe everything you see, give it 24 to 48 hours before you actually make your opinion on it, absorb as much detail as you can, try to stay away from, comments and opinions, and, just formulate your own logical thought process based around what you're seeing and reading out there, because who knows if it's manufactured or if it's, on how authentic it is based around all these advancements with AI.
My gut tells me if it's anything like the finance world, like you said, Mike, regulations will always be lagging the use cases of how it's being applied. It'll never catch up. And I think that there's going to be a cat and mouse game going on forever. However, having Europe out in front doing something, anything, gives the United States a little look into, okay, well, here's what's working, what's not. So 2 years from now, or whenever this thing gets enacted, by then, hopefully, we've done something smart here. Be interesting to see.
Like replace all politicians with AI.
Keeping the news.
All I've got to say is there's going to be a lot of ugly facial recognition amongst politicians for the coming up to the election.
Oh, it's going to be hilarious. It's going to be, but you got to look at this with, Joker eyes, right? You just got to have fun with it because, it's a clown show. The whole thing is just a gigantic clown show. And this is now the new circus. So, I don't know where things are going to end up. I just know that it's going to be a banana year here next year. And, it's either you buckle up or you try to fight the tidal wave.
Yeah.
Keeping on the European side of things, there's a company out of Sweden named Klarna, which, Michelle, you're familiar with, but over here in the States, we're not as much. And Klarna is announcing they're freezing hiring because AI can do the job instead. There's an article out of Mashable. This is not that they're laying off anybody. They're just not going to hire because they think they can AI it. This company has over 5,000 employees. They're a buy now, pay later app that basically, if this works and the CEO is right, they can freeze the number of employees they have and grow the company into perpetuity. So that's interesting in itself, but IBM has announced they're also looking at doing something very similar. So thoughts around hiring freezes because of AI, which are already starting in the employee space. Mike, we'll start with you. What do you think on this? Is this a flash in the pan, or are we going to see more of this?
I mean, it's a risky move, but I mean, I guess from a business perspective, it's a way to test the waters without getting the scrutiny of getting rid of your workforce.
Yeah.
But it's risky in the sense that now you have to spend the time, energy, money on training something that may not perform the way you need it to versus an employee that you can equally spend that time.
Michelle, you've actually used this app.
I have. So we have a company here in the UK called wayfair.co.uk, and it sells all sorts of things, like it's kind of like a homewares, you can get everything. It's kind of like Amazon, but it's more for homeware stuff. You don't buy DVDs and that sort of stuff, like quilts and pillowcases and, whatever. And I bought I don't know, a clothes rack or something, whatever it was. And one of the options was, would you like to split this into 3 easy interest-free payments of, $39.95 or something, I think it was. And I went, oh, yes, and pressed that button. And I think it was like a really quick, 30-second process to enter my details, and bang, there I was. And it took 3 payments from my bank account for the next 3 months. And it was pretty seamless and pretty easy. And, it's actually quite big here. People do use it a lot. But I was going to say to you, I thought, how would you explain what Klarna is necessarily? So I, of course, went to Chat GTP before we came on air tonight. Right. And asked it what it was. And it says it's a Swedish financial technology company best known for buy now, pay later. As you said, was founded in 2005, and it offers a range of financial products primarily focused on making online shopping more easier and more flexible. Now, I guess they make their money between the merchant and them. So obviously the people selling things that are offering it, because there's no fees associated with it for me as a consumer. And the person taking out the interest-free loan, I guess that's what you want to call it. It's something that I think going into next year, we're going to see more and more. As you said, people won't necessarily be firing people or getting rid of employees, but what they will do is they'll wait to see how many bums on seats, as they say in a call center, they can save by having AI do some of the work.
I think from my perspective, as an American, we don't everyone just dumps it on the credit card. Let me tell you, that's what goes on this part of the world. But Klarna is an interesting thing because they don't actually run your credit until you like it's between them and the store. They get paid by the store, not by the people using it. So I thought it was an interesting business model. They reminded me, although they're not PayPal, but it's that concept of fintech as bank. That's kind of what Klarna does. What really shocked me was that 5,000 people. That is not a small company. even in the fintech world, that is a massive company. So
Yeah.
if they're dabbling in that, let's be honest, the core of capitalism, and I'm speaking as a finance guy, you want efficiency, but if you can do it without the employee, they're going to, right? So that's going to be, this is more of a guinea pig bellwether. If this thing works, watch out.
Well, it's 5,000 pensions they don't have to pay out in 30 years, right? So, you know, we'll see where that ends up. But when you say that the deal is between the merchant and them, so the merchant is the one that actually has to fork over the payment plan?
Well, I imagine, because I don't pay it as the consumer.
Well, you pay it in installments, right? But like the business doesn't get paid for the service on the front end from Klarna, and Klarna doesn't float
the business
transaction.
Pays Klarna for the ability to enable the customer to do the transaction.
Yeah. So just say,
why doesn't the business just do it then?
Well, because the business does to do all the online electronic processing, create a gateway. It's a payment, clear the payment, etc. Klarna does all that.
So, and they do.
Hang on.
I sell a
product. Wait. I sell a product, right? On my store, on my website. I have Klarna as a payment processor to that. Michelle, you come to my website, you buy a product, you decide you want to pay it off in 3 months. I, as the business, have to accept payment installations in 3 months. I don't get my money right now.
No, you get your money right up front.
You do, right? So Klarna is the one that's floating it.
You get your money straight away, less the fee that Klarna charge for them being the bank.
That's fine. So Klarna is the one that's floating it.
Right.
So it's kind of like factoring, isn't it, your business, where you've got an invoice book, where you've got 6 people that owe you, you know, $100,000, and you sell that to a finance company for 80% or 90%. They give you the money straight away, and then they use the 20 or the 10 or 20% as their, you know, their floating fee, and however quick they get the money out of the people that owe you is how how much they get paid for that.
Right.
Yeah, the mob calls that consolidation, but
it's legal.
All right, well, that makes more sense now. I mean, look, you know, as a vendor, as a merchant, you're going to be subjected to fees anyway, right? So as long as you get whatever you know are expecting from the transaction minus the fees, I mean, it's no different from you sold the whole thing up front. It's just a consumer-based process and an advantage to the consumer that way. And for Klarna, obviously, like on their books, they have residual income that's coming in over that period of time that they could rely on.
Right. Klarna's business model works. They've been around a long time. Was it 2011? I can't remember when they launched, but they're not new.
So what is
ChatGPT told me 2005, wasn't it? Yes, 2005.
That sounds right.
What are we expecting these AI jobs to consist of? Is it sales? Is it marketing? Is it content creation? Is it I guess fixing or implementing any additional marketplace integration within the product?
Having used the service, I would expect that it would be relatively easy for them to use AI in terms of answering, obviously, chatbots for the questions if people have questions, checking people's credit scores and assigning, you know, if they're not doing that already, assigning us, you know, like a
risk assessment,
you know, like a number based on should we proceed with the deal or not, you know, that kind of stuff. I mean, it was pretty quick anyway. So, you know, like, I mean, obviously if you, like, I mean, my credit score is like in the 700s here, so, which is pretty high. So, you know, like it really wasn't a bother. But I mean, the thing about it was like, well, why would I pay, say it was let's just say easy numbers for the show, say it was £100 and, you know, 4 payments of £25. Why wouldn't I do that when I get the £75 in my bank for the next 2 or 3 months, as opposed to spending £100 today? So, you know, like, I mean, for me, it was a no-brainer. I don't know how much they charge the merchant though.
Well, there's a cost as a consumer as well. I mean, that cost is you are now providing them with all of your information, having this bot, this now AI bot, have control of your social security number, your information, how much your credit score is. Like, this is valuable details that they can actually turn around and now sell and monetize from. So
interestingly, they don't email me though.
Mike, to answer your question, the CEO specified that they don't know exactly what jobs they're going to be attacking just yet with it. And
okay, so that's a cart before the horse right there, man.
No, I'm sure he knows exactly. He's just not saying.
Okay, well, publicly speaking, it's a cart before the horse then, but like that's a dangerous way to lead a company.
So I'll tie this to a story from last week, which I didn't include in I don't, you don't have the write up here, but McDonald's and Google have a cloud tie-up. They're doing a strategic partnership. And if you read between the lines, essentially McDonald's will be using Google's AI to help run the drive-through, the back end of the drive-throughs. So when you pull into McDonald's and you order your shake and fries, this thing is going to get AI responsive to you, et cetera, et cetera. So you can already see how employees are not as necessary. In how long has ChatGPT been around?
Yeah, they'll still forget my sweet and sour sauce. But look, it's only what? I mean, I guess it's about to be 2024, right? So today's December 13th. It was only what, about 2.5 years ago where McDonald's was given like $50,000 or $5,000 signing bonuses because they were so eager for help. And now in such a short period of time, they've transitioned to potentially running the same course as Klarna of, having a potential hiring freeze in that particular division of their franchises if this technology can provide a better or more promising service.
Right. So I want to take us to a follow-up from a story from last week. For long-time listeners,
can I just say one thing?
Please, go ahead.
I think AI could definitely be helpful. We recently ordered 4 things from a McDonald's drive-through, and when we got around to pay, 2 of the 4 were not what we ordered. 50% strike rate. So I'm thinking AI is going to be a little bit better than the woman who was working that night.
The Terminator
can't spit in your food either.
Yeah, your average teen is probably going to be just on the same par as the Terminator with that stuff.
Yeah.
So there was a story last week that Sports Illustrated was using AI authors for their articles. They were leveraging out another service, and it turned out there was AI that was generating these content in the Sports Illustrated magazine. We debated last week, as the news had just broken, I think the day before, whether or not that was a scandal or if this was just not that big of a deal. Anyway, it apparently was a scandal because there's a story out coming from CBS News. Sports Illustrated fires CEO after AI controversy. So they basically took their CEO and many of their C-suite and have canned them outright. And then they're basically cleaning house. The parent company is wiping out the current management structure inside of Sports Illustrated. Now, this is essentially, as I said before the show, in my opinion, they've ruined their brand. Mike, I know you're right. It's all going to happen, but the first one takes it on the chin, and that's Sports Illustrated.
So we're not just making that assessment. Look at what I'm highlighting here. The company's shares were trading more than 5% lower on Tuesday as of 2 p.m. Now, is it a result of this? I mean, anytime a CEO shakeup happens, the market takes a hit. But once again, it's we bring something to the attention on a show like this, and then we find ourselves doing a follow-up story, very shortly thereafter. My question first and foremost, when I saw this as part of the docket for today, was, is this an AI generated article? So, look, it's the thought process is starting to, I guess, cement itself, at least in my head, to double check a lot of these things. But I find it very difficult to believe that people weren't aware of this. There weren't more people involved with it. And the only reason why he did get canned is just because of the backlash that occurred from it. But there's no apology from it. There's no accountability other than the fact that he lost his job. He'll get hired somewhere else. He'll go around consulting on how he did it. He'll become a billionaire just based on the fact of teaching companies on how to do this and really how to not avoid the disclosure element of it. But
actually, I'll respond to that. Michelle, let's get your thoughts on this. Good, bad? Did they make a mistake?
Well, the thing is, last week, if you remember, the thing was, not our fault. It was this ArvCon mob. It wasn't us. We didn't do anything. Their hands were clean, weren't they? Now suddenly, not so shiny and clean.
Well, the dust settled. That's why.
Yeah. But, the CEO, the COO, the media partnerships person and someone in legal, all gone in a week, which is pretty staggering if you think about it. For something a week ago was nothing to see here. This wasn't us.
Apparently there was something to see.
It would seem so.
So tying right into that is an interesting story from 2 days ago. financial news site uses AI to copy competitors. So this is something I pulled out of Semaphore. Investing.com is a financial news site that uses AI to create their stories, right? Very similar to Sports Illustrated. However, this company admits it. They come right out and say, listen, these are AI generated. We're here to give you the news. And they're not trying to hide that fact, which is what did in Sports Illustrated. The problem with this one is these are copies of human authored stories that were written elsewhere. The AI is basically plagiarized. The site, again, admits it's AI, but doesn't credit the original authors. So they're being hit now by all these authors saying, hey, the stuff you're putting out there on your thing is awfully similar to what I wrote. Here it is. So this news just hit 2 days ago. It's on the 10th, so 3 days ago. Still too soon to see if this is a debacle or not. And we're going to see a lot of these. And in the beginning, I think it's going to be the Sports Illustrated disaster. But as it goes on, and it's a commonplace thing because everyone's using AI right now, I think it just is a regular recurring event. What do you guys think?
So I was just, this sort of stuff just makes me so mad because I just find the audacity of it is pretty bad. I mean, we get taught from when we're in elementary school that copying the work of the kid next to you and then handing it into the teacher is not what you're allowed to do, right? So
apparently you're allowed to do it at Harvard.
Okay. No, they think they can do it at Harvard, but they shouldn't. So,
well, I mean, you can rise to become the president of the university there.
We suddenly have gotten off of the digital media revolution. We keep going.
So something might have happened that I don't necessarily know about. But anyway, this wasn't in the story run sheet. But the thing that, like, for example, we quite often, don't we, have information.com, the information.com articles, and they're gated and you can't always read them unless you have a subscription. And then what we say is give it 1 or 2 days and someone else will write about it and reference that article. So then, Descript or Decrypt or, Coinbase or one of those, Crypto News, will reference that particular article and they will say information.com said on Thursday, blah, 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 blah. That's how you do it. But these articles are not like that. The fact that they sum up all the stuff and generating, and the thing that I find really, really interesting about this is that they're obviously, it's not just go and ask ChatGPT because we know that it's not real-time data. So what they're doing is someone is actually putting in the original content and asking it to do that. Make up the article and to re-summarize and all of that stuff. So they're actually knowingly, willingly, and whatever doing that without, I don't know, any morals, I suppose. Why should I be surprised? I don't know, but I am.
I made this point last week, though, that the smaller creators can and are using AI to create content en masse at scale. The large established organizations like a Sports Illustrated or a Time Magazine or whomever cannot do that because of these legal problems. It hasn't been resolved yet, whether or not, the copyright looks like it's melting away right now. And so what do you do if you're a large organization and you can't compete with these upstarts that are AIing the crap out of you, death by 1,000 cuts? I think that they're doing the closet thing of, we don't admit we're doing it. It's exactly what Sports Illustrated did. Well, we used a third party. We didn't know that they were AIing the crap out of it. News to us. And meanwhile, you're going to see AI everything going on. It's already, I think Mark Schaefer calls it content shock. The amount of stuff that's being pumped out. There's SEO groups that will give you 500 articles a day if you pay them.
Well, they're death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, it is an old SEO trick, right? Just repurpose an existing article and leverage their talking points. That's why a blog is so valuable on a website. You don't have to create the content. All you have to do is either copy the link, and then cite it. Make sure you obviously give credit to that. Now, the problem here, and I highlighted it again, just in this particular article, you have a copyright here, right? And, that in and of itself is not a deflection of liability. It's a claim of ownership, right? So you're claiming that you're actually owning that content, but if you're plagiarizing it, then you are just basically stealing it from another place that is theoretically copyrighted. This shows
it's fraud.
Well, it's fraud, it's criminal, it's theft, it's deceitful, and frankly, it's not enforced anymore. These are things that, really killed the whole line of journalism, because what does a journalist do nowadays? They go on, they do their research by looking up articles that have already been written, and they go and write the same type of stuff, just in a different way. They'll take a couple quotes out of it. Yeah. It's all opinionated at this point. It's no longer news. It's no longer journalism. But
Mike, it was always opinion.
In a way, yes, but it's way more now, because everybody's walking around with one of these and they're playing reporter themselves, whether it's on any social platform or whatever. But it's with respect to the AI, I mean, ChatGPT has plugins now that can scour the internet in real time. It's not all, listed at whatever happened in 2021 or whatever. So, they don't necessarily knowingly have to put the article in order to generate the opinion or the content, but they can design the bot to provide the content in a context that meets whatever opinion they're trying to promote here. But we're saying they and them and it, and like the bottom line is, like, Sports Illustrated specifically created human profiles of people who don't exist using this, pumped out fake content on behalf of copyrighted material from people who don't exist. It's all about a deflection of liability. That's why the lawyers got canned. That's why the SEO got canned, or the CEO got canned, but this is not going to stop. How soon before, we start graduating kids with PhDs that have no clue what they're doing other than typing something in to ChatGPT?
Well, let's talk about the college university experience some other night. I'll say this, though. This takes us back to the EU regulations that kicked off our show tonight. The story over there in Europe, they're really focused on how the military and the enforcement facilities are going to use this AI. They're not really talking about protection of company copyrights. And I think that in the States, that's going to be an issue here. I think that you're going to get the regional differences of what's the important thing around AI. But this copyright, the concept of copywriting, the very notion of it, I think is under fire. I'd be curious to see how it doesn't change. Right now, if I can take, Mike, to your point, if I have to do research as a journalist, write a similar article to what you wrote, but it's mine now, and I can do that with the click of a button, at what point then this is very similar to when a rock artist is too similar to his inspirational, mentor, and then he gets sued. You know, about Blurred Lines or whatever it was. There's a concept of it moves from inspiration at one point to then Led Zeppelin is getting sued because it's a little too similar. We're in that space already with AI and journalism.
I mean, intellectual property is still valuable, right? It's investable. There needs protection behind it. To dismiss it and just to say, oh, well, this is the world we live in now, creates a whole mess of different issues.
But you're in a world of a million content creators, a billion content creators. You're not going to go. The whole idea was always, if the guy's not worth suing, you didn't sue him, right? Was it Columbia Records that used to have? Who was that went after Metallica and was working with one of the record labels to shut down the fans who were downloading off Napster? Remember, Mike, you talked about this last week.
Yeah, it was, the drummer, Lars Ulrich, he went crazy.
But they're not going to go after Mike Neubauer if he's not a billionaire. He's not worth shutting down one guy.
But okay, so this segues into all the conversations we've had about Web3, right? Do you go after the NFT projects, or do you go after the exchanges that connect it to the actual point of transaction? And we're seeing a little bit of both, but they're having more progress, more headway with going after, the FTXs, the Krakens, the Coinbases,
the bigger boys.
Well, it's the fork in the road rather than going after it down the road, right? So you attack it at its primary source. That's what Metallica and all those guys did. They went after Napster rather than Mike Neubauer, right? Now, Mike Neubauer was a very prominent user of Napster, so they could have easily come after me. But at the same time, I had, I was just part of the boat that was rowing in the wrong direction, I suppose. I don't know. all this is just a deflection of liability, but the copyright and the protection behind that, I still think is valuable. And, you know, it's almost like, you know, what makes a Rolls Royce special, right? Is it the fact that it's an expensive car? Or is it the fact that it's handmade? Like there's actual fingerprints on the car that sewed the seats and actually put things together. Obviously, a lot of that has been produced and it's more of a production process, but there's still that element, that uniqueness to it. Are human written articles going to be the Rolls Royce of the future?
Yes.
I mean, that could potentially be one of our topics in our prediction show.
But what if they're not as well done? What if they're just poor quality?
Well, again, this dates back to everything that we've been talking about with AI to begin with. Are we training our thought process to determine what is good quality based around the output that AI is providing? Or are we going to work our entire careers and understand what is true, what's not true, and how to properly communicate with ourselves in order to determine quality work?
So this is getting to the Bloc. Go ahead, Michelle.
I think that one of the things that needs to happen with this, like, for example, the senior vice president of Motley Fool, and, you know, I've read Motley Fool stuff for a really long time. They are, you know, they are quality journalism. They do really good stuff. And he said, you know, like from time to time they've acted and they've sued people for, you know, plagiarism and copyright from their content from time to time. And he said what they're talking about now is that, you know, we've got to the point where AI, you know, copies good content and makes it mediocre. And that's really what we're talking about here, isn't it? Like you're taking stuff that's really good and making it like bleh, pretty bland. But what has to happen is one of these larger players needs to sue one of these. Like, for example, when, you know, Ed Sheeran has to go to court because someone thinks their songs, you know, they originally wrote a song and, you know, he copied it and whatever. And that, you know, bands from time to time have these things, you know, where, and we said that, you know, Sting gets $5 for every time some, you know, Sam Smith song or whatever gets played on the radio, you know, like until the day he dies or whatever. You know, like someone like that has to do that in order for the, you know, all of these people that are just using the bots to, you know, farm information from other stories and whatever. And it actually has to have a consequence. Now, whether it will or not, there needs to be some kind of big, you know, big settlement for a smaller type player doing this stuff in order for other people to go, oh, hang on, maybe we actually really need to be a bit more careful.
Right. All right. So in summary of the articles this week, we've got the, obviously Europe reaching the deal on comprehensive AI rules is a major, major one. This is the first in the world, and it's a bellwether for the rest of the regions. I think it'd be interesting to see what the details are on that. Number two was Klarna freezing their hiring because AI can do the job, which ties into the McDonald's thing. And so you've got companies now that are finding quote unquote efficiency in the worker side of things. That is the easiest place to make money, especially I'll remind people we're in a recession. And third is the financial news sites using AI to copy their competitors, not giving credit, which is the back end of Sports Illustrated firing their CEO for doing something similar. AI is disrupting businesses, folks. This is whether we like it or not. It's already in motion. It's already out there and making impact, and they're having trouble regulating this thing. I don't think this changes. I think this accelerates. Google's got DeepMind AIs now doing Gemini. Like the LLMs are advancing to the point, and then there's the math Q-star thing where it's not going to slow down. It's going to get faster.
Yeah.
I think we're heading in for some rough waters. I do think though this benefits the smaller creators. I think the small businesses that can leverage this and put themselves on equal footing with these big guys, but the big boys are in trouble. That's my perspective. What do you guys think?
I think that the smaller people are in trouble too if their business model only relies on being able to regurgitate, it's not even repurpose, regurgitate this stuff for their survival. As we saw, the latest update to ChatGPT, what it can do now wiped out 30-40% of all those little apps and bots that got created in the last 11 months. So those people got to find something else to do. I think that ultimately that's what will happen in this if this model that we're talking about in this story, the semaphore story, if that's all they've got going for them, they're not here in 12 months' time.
Mike, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think we're neglecting just how fast the technology is advancing. And I think we need to just maintain focus on that because, you know, there's a huge component of this that's right around the corner in quantum computing, and that's going to put all of this in the dust. This will enter the archives of technological advancement. Once that hits the market, at least in grand scale, the amount of content and the amount of information artificially driven is going to surpass everything we've ever known. So that is something more to keep an eye on. The next thing is, I guess I just can't wait for the first AI whatever to graduate from Harvard.
We will be, we'll touch that next week. So this is your weekly insight into the digital media revolution. We come every week at 4 p.m. Eastern, and we discuss things that will impact your business, the small business world, as well as the large businesses that are adapting to things like blockchain, AI, and how the media is evolving. It's a revolution, folks. Right now, whole businesses are being built on the back end of new ways of doing things digitally. AI is a huge component of that, obviously. So our goal here with this show is to help you understand how you can profit, benefit, and put it to work for yourself. We'll be back next week. We're going to cut it short this week because, unfortunately, I have to get to New York City to meet clients. So I want to thank everyone.
Next week's our show, last show before Christmas. So everyone who's going to be watching, come dressed in your Christmas stuff.
Oh, that's right. Next week is our Christmas show. We will be here at the regular time. And for those who wish to follow more, we are on YouTube, on the Business on the Block on YouTube. And we'll direct you there for now. We'll have more to talk about in the new year. Anything else, gentlemen, ladies?
That's it.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
See you next week.
We'll see you guys in a week.